Hey there, this is Robert Budd, and you are listening to The Robert Budd Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you are a return listener, thank you so much for coming back and listening for more. And if you are a brand new listener, welcome. Welcome to the show. These shows typically it's a long form interview, and I interview usually my friends, those people around me, or friends of friends, those people around me that I find interesting or have been referred to me in all different kinds of industries, whether it's dancing, chiropractic, gym business, family therapist, all different kinds. So today on our show, I interview a really good friend of mine that we've been friends since junior high school. So that's, how many years is that now? I guess it was in the 80s when we met. So 30 years or so. His name is Dionizio Fisher, and currently he lives in Colorado. So we get into a little bit about where he lives and the stuff that's going on around where he lives. And we reconnected about a year ago and have been talking about how we as individuals are going to contribute to our society, our communities, our families, and just, what we're committed to and how are we going to do that. So we started doing a weekly and then a bi-weekly call. And out of those calls, I really discovered how much that I could give back, how much of a mentor that I could be, and programs that I could do. And so I've started a mentorship program out of just our speaking with each other. So I wanted him on the show to get on the court, in real life, what's going on out there in his world and where he sees that all of us can be a contribution, and him being a contribution himself. Like, what can he do for his family? What's the next steps? Where does he see that there's gaps in our society where, we can really all have some compassion and love each other, and where that could make a difference. So that's what happens in our interview. And I am really excited to share with all of you a really good friend of mine, Dionizio. So without further ado, here is who I call Fish. He got the nickname Fish when we were in junior high. Just a little backstory that he had really dry skin. His last name is Fisher. So Fish, Scales, it's just Matt. There we go. All right.
Ready.
Morning, Fish.
Morning, Bud Man.
Welcome to the show. Welcome.
I am honored. Thank you.
So as we were just talking about before we push record, as a sound check, I always ask everybody, what did they have for breakfast? So what'd you have for breakfast this morning?
Well, this morning I had 2 sausage McMuffins from McDonald's, and I put some grape jelly on both of them. Also a large coffee.
Large coffee and grape jelly McMuffins.
Yes, exactly. I'm still working on the coffee, as you can see.
And you were saying that you eat way more McDonald's than you should.
Way, way, way more McDonald's than I should, because I drive a lot during my job and I don't usually get a lot of time to take an actual lunch. And so I'll be driving along, I'm like, oh, I'm kind of hungry. Well, I mean, not just McDonald's, but like fast food. Like,
yeah. Why McDonald's in particular this morning? You lean towards McDonald's rather than Jack in the Box or a donut shop?
Because the McDonald's is like a block and a half away from me, basically. So, yeah.
And it doesn't do weird stuff to your system, because I know McDonald's for me is like, it jacks my, just because I haven't had it since forever. I was telling you, I eat the, what are those, hash browns?
Right. Okay.
And a coffee like once a year. But besides that,
I think comparatively, I think I'm going to die soon compared to how much I eat compared to you. It's I can't say that it doesn't do anything to my system, but I think, I have Crohn's disease, so it's already a digestive disorder. I'm supposed to be really careful with the things that I eat. Like, I'm basically supposed to eat nothing, like rice and like maybe fish or something like that. I mean, I'm supposed to have like a really strict diet. So I'm always having like, kind of digestive issues anyway. I just kind of learned to deal with it. I don't eat, there's certain things that I can't like eat too much, like creamy, like a lot of creams. Yeah, that will mess with me really badly. But the McDonald's or the fast food, not so much right now.
When did you find out you had Crohn's, or you were diagnosed with it?
I was diagnosed when I was 14 years old, actually. So around the time when we met.
And it was just like because you're having stomach issues, and how'd you figure that out?
So my mom had when I was 12, I was seventh grade, I think. My mom had she had me stay, me and my brother. She sent me to back to New York to stay with my grandmother. And we didn't know what it was. My grandmother, she was old school, and she would it's like I'm like 12 years old, really skinny. She would give us espresso, like in the morning to drink. So I'm like, Grandma, I don't like this. But she's like, you drink it, because I was supposed to have a better day at school. And I remember a couple of times after drinking it, I would go and I'd throw up, and they're like, something wrong. So I'd stop doing it. So we thought it was just that. We thought it was the espresso. But then I'd stop it. And then I just started having more issues. I was having really bad stomach pains. I would get sick in the morning. So it took them a couple of years to diagnose me, actually. So they were having me go to the hospital. They were having me drink all kinds of stuff. They just didn't know what it could be. I think it's not Crohn's disease isn't a very common illness for African Americans or Latinos. And also usually it's diagnosed when you're like in your late teens, early adulthood, So I was only 12 years old. So they didn't know. That was like the last thing that they thought that I could probably have. So for about a year and a half of going back and forth, doctors, and then finally my mother brought me back to California, and it was at Kaiser over there off of, was it Woodman? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that Kaiser. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I finally had a good doctor who diagnosed me properly. But that was after like a lot of things. I was having allergic reactions to medications they were giving me. It was a long trial.
And what is it? What was it? Is it like a lack of enzyme or something like that in your system?
I don't know specifically. All that I really know is that it's from how it's described is like from your mouth to your anus, you can have like lots of different issues. You can have
the whole route,
the whole digestive tract. Yeah. You can like have like, the lining of your digestive tract and thins out. You get a lot of acid buildup. I had a perforated ulcer. So I had an ulcer like in my upper intestinal tract, I guess, that they had to search for. They removed about a foot of my lower intestine because it was adhesed to my bladder. So anytime when I'd have to pee or whatever, it would. I was in pain like all the time. So it was right up until they diagnosed me. And then I think I was like within about a week or two of being diagnosed, I had the surgery because they started to really see what was going on and what needed to be done. I was like inches away from a colostomy bag. Basically.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Which would have been awesome at North Hollywood. Like, hey, everybody.
Fish, what's this bag for?
Right.
Pushing on it.
If I wasn't getting picked on enough as it was. Oh boy. Yeah.
Hey, were we all getting picked on at some point in our?
I don't know. I
always felt like, I don't know. I think high school
you were always
on each other.
No, I mean, I don't think so. I think some people got it more. I mean, you were always a big guy. I was always like the small guy, the little guy. I was lucky that I had good friends, like you and Erwin and I mean, I had good friends that were cool, and we also went to a good school, where we had like a diverse mixture of people. It wasn't just the people from our neighborhood. We all came in, we're busting, the magnet school. And but even then in high school, there were still those groups of people who would still kind of like, I mean, again, I was really small. I was an easy target, so. Yeah, I got picked. I would think that I got picked on a little bit more than other people did, but maybe that's just a personal opinion.
It's funny. My story is I got picked on when I was a kid.
It is a story, yeah. But it did happen. I mean, it happened. So
people are listening are like, wait a second, I got picked on when I was. If a parent or somebody listening, how would they know if their kid has, what's the symptoms and stuff like that of Crohn's? It just interests me because, I mean, kids, and now I think there's so much additives and blah, blah, blah and stuff going around in their food and allergies, and kids have are more susceptible just because of our food industry and stuff like that. There's all kinds of stuff happening. Right. How would they know if it's necessarily Crohn's or something else? Like, what would you suggest? Like, if your son was getting sick, I mean, what would you look for?
So, and I mean, that's the thing. That's why it's so hard, I think, because there are so many other illnesses that are similar to Crohn's that you can think that it could be, inflammatory or irritable bowel syndrome, or it could be, there's just so many different. So I think it really is a matter of, having a good relationship with your physician and knowing family history, because like now in my family, anytime anybody does get sick or does start to have digestive issues, because of knowing myself, that'll be like when they go and see the doctor, they'll say, hey, can you check to see if I have Crohn's? And I'm not really sure what kind of tests they have. There are some certain I don't know if it's enzymes, but there are certain slight chemical imbalances, I guess. I can't say positively, but there are things that you can do to test to see if you do have Crohn's disease. Like right now, I have Crohn's, but they say it's inactive. I'm not having any flare-ups or anything like that. Of course, I do have the thing with the lining of my, my ass, basically. So to get a little personal, and it can like weaken, and you can get a tear, and it's all bad.
Does diet help all that? I mean, could you cure it? Could you get rid of it? Because I've heard of people saying, well, if you do this detox or cleanse or whatever, it's shown to help Crohn's and get rid of it or something like that. I don't know that much about it to really know if.
I don't think that there's a cure, and I think that you can do a lot of things to limit some of the adverse effects of it.
Yeah,
but I wouldn't say that there is an actual cure. There's no cure, and you can have some people go 10, 15, 20 years without having any type of a flare up or anything like that. And then, like with myself, it's been a long time since I've had any real active like pain, because I mean, there would be times where you just get these pains in your stomach. I mean, there are some times, but not like, I mean, it used to be extreme, and it can be extreme. So a lot of people find different ways to alleviate. Some people smoke pot, because of the qualities. One, it seems to take away a lot of some of those abdominal pains. Also because you have some people have the symptom of loss of appetite, so it helps with that. Some people just are really strict with their diet. I mean, they'll just, you're not supposed to have like a lot of fatty foods, spicy foods. red meat, you know, a lot stuff that I eat every single day.
I was gonna say, sounds like maybe a vegetarian, man.
Yeah, I mean, really, like when it was almost overwhelming when I would kind of go through and the doctor gives you all of these different things, like, okay, this is what you should eat and shouldn't eat, and I'm just like, I can't eat anything, you know.
Yeah, well, it just sounds like parents or whatever, those who had it, could be overwhelmed and going like, okay, well, I know somebody who has it, or my kid has it. Like, what do I do? What do I don't do, and stuff like that. So
yeah, I think that the first thing that would be a good sign is just like abdominal pains. Another thing with me is that smells, like, you know, like people couldn't put on cologne or anything like that around me. Certain food smells would just trigger like this really bad, like intense, like nausea. Like I would, going back, I remember specifically, it was like the Panorama Mall, the Sherman Oaks Galleria, when we'd walk into like, gosh, what was the store that? I don't even know if it was Nordstrom's, but you'd walk in and there'd be like the perfume counters and stuff like that, right? When you walk in this, by the time I'd get into we'd walk there, and by the time I'd get into the main strip of the mall, I was done. I'd be in so much like pain and nausea. It was like, you know, somebody called my mom, which meant I was going to have to sit there for another 2 hours before she decided to come pick me up. Remember that back in the day when you had to call somebody and hope they were at home to pick up the phone?
Couldn't text anybody, and you know,
leave a message if they had the answering machine.
Yeah. What or who was some of your influences? So I know you as an artist. You know, you always wrote music. You're always rapping. You taught me how to dance. You taught me how to electric slide. You remember doing that in front of somebody's house, and we were like getting ready for a dance or something like that. And you're like,
vaguely,
check out this move. It's called electric slide. I'm like, damn, like, this is what we're doing up in New York. You guys haven't figured it out yet here in the West Coast. So I thought it was all that. What was your influences? Who or what for your artistic
influences? Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, it's kind of, you know, when I was growing up, I mean, I just loved music. I mean, I loved a lot of things. I liked people that would express themselves. You know, I mean, I was always like, you know, I always really just liked entertainers. There were certain people that I would see on stage that would make me feel like, I mean, it would be not even just in the music aspect, you know, like whether like Eddie Murphy or you know, I think at the time, I'm trying to think at the time when at that time, you know, music was just such a big thing in the late 80s, early 90s, you know. I was inspired a lot just by the scene, you know, by the genre, just by the things that were going on. Like hip hop was changing so much. But then like our society was changing a lot too. I mean, like people were just even like, again, when I go back to like the magnet school, people were trying to find ways to like integrate each other, you know, to find ways to like, you know, separate out, you know, to get people who were diverse. And so you saw that in a lot of music. I mean, we had like a lot of the you know, the gangster rap, which was starting to come a little bit later, like with NWA and stuff like that. But prior to that, you had the guys, you know, like Self-Destruction and I mean, there was just like a lot of positive people like trying to end violence and so, I mean, it's kind of hard to say. I just like Run DMC, or someone asked me a long time ago, like, who's your favorite rap? And I was like, said Kwame, and people were like, Kwame, who the hell is Kwame? Like, nobody knew who that was. And it was just, I don't know. It's you know, and then also for me coming from New York to California, you know, it was like a lot of different, there was the East Coast. I mean, there was, back then it wasn't like, there wasn't any like East West Coast, you know, wars or anything like that, but there were two totally different dynamics. You know, I remember after I had lived in California for a couple of years and went back to New York, the movie Colors had been out, remember? Mm-hmm. And my cousins in New York were like, man, that's crazy. That's where you live, out there in California where they're doing that. I'm like, we're in the Bronx, man. Like, do you see how bad it is? Like, you can't. So anyways, yeah. I didn't answer your question like at all. I had lots of, I guess I can't hold down to any one person, because throughout my life, there has always been different people who would inspire me. I mean, I think I was talking with you about earlier, a different day, that even, I just had like a lot of influence. I can go into, I was always, when you talk about being artistic, I was always, I read a lot, like all the time, whether it was, an author, I was like, because I was gonna say, I know Stephen King isn't exactly literature, but I like read him, or just all kinds of stuff. I don't, I was just always inspired by people who were like kind of out there and trying to make a difference, trying to, whether it was Chuck D, like I said, or Michael Jackson, or anything like that, when there were people who were out there, and it was actually more than just look at my shiny watch or look at my car, the people who were actually like, hey, look at the block you live on, or look at, look what's happening across the ocean over here, look at other things. That's where more of my inspiration came from. And that was more of what had always drove me to write, to either write poetry or raps or whatever. But it's kind of funny, because really before the time, like maybe a year or two before you and I met, I didn't think I could even dance. I couldn't, I was just so shy about a lot of different things. We talked about that because of, my brother. You can't do it. You look stupid. You can't dance. Oh, maybe I can't dance. And then I finally opened up. So yeah, remember in high school we had all those dance contests all the time. Yeah. So yeah,
I don't think a lot of people see. I don't know. I'm not like dancing every weekend, but I don't think people really know that about me, that I love to dance and grew up doing a lot of dancing. That's kind of like how I started to fit in, because I didn't have a great picture of myself, but I knew I can dance.
Right.
I knew I could get out there and hold my own, and that was a cool self-expression for me. I knew I can do that, and so I suggest, I don't know, I like to mentor young men and stuff like that. And I suggest finding their own self-expression, whether it is like working out or writing or, rapping or dancing or whatever, find your self-expression that you can do, right, and bust through some of the barriers of that self-talk, like, oh, I'm not as smart as this guy, or oh, I'm not as athletic or whatever. But for me, I knew I can dance.
Okay.
This white boy can cut it. So what about for your profession now? I mean, what was the influence there? Like I never really knew you as an IT guy or a computer guy or anything like that. Like how'd that come about? And kind of why I'm pointing to this is for listeners is looking to what influences them and like their path and stuff like that, like who they're known to be and what they kind of end up to be in their passion and stuff like that. So
okay, so and the thing about that is, I mean, I do know why I started to work in IT, or why I thought IT would be, information technology would be a viable way for me to pay bills, basically. I mean, it was some things that I did that was fun. And I mean, not to get into it really a whole lot, but I don't know. You can edit it out if I'm not supposed to say names, but Steve McGinnis, he's actually the one who like got me into IT. Like he like helped me build a computer, and he showed me. He basically, I think he sent me over a modem, SimCity, which I think at the time was like probably 20 little cassettes, those 5 1/4 inch disc, floppy disk. But he helped me build a computer. He showed me how to set up the motor. I remember, do you remember like we used to, man, we did some stuff back then. We would make, listening devices out of our phones. Like we would record our phone, like our friends' phone calls, like like stuff like that. That like how did you know how to do that? So, but it was really more or less when, you know, when I'd gotten married and moved out here to Denver, you know, there were lots of things that I was really interested in, like working with children or working in nature. But, you know, when I moved out here, I was 19 years old, about to be 20, and about to, like, you know, my wife at the time was like 6 months pregnant, you know. So at least in my head, I didn't think that I had a whole lot of time to start thinking about things that I actually want to do, you know, like, and to actually spend time and focus. It was more or less, how are you going to feed this kid? You know, what are the things and I was actually working. I worked at a daycare center for a little bit, but it was like, you know, this is not gonna, you know, this isn't going to sustain you for a while. And so I started to think, well, what things do I like? You know, I like, you know, I mean, at the time, again, this is like, we're talking like, you know, early 90s, you know, so IT computers wasn't still like a really big thing, you know, but it was starting to be, you know, because I think Bill Clinton had some kind of an initiative of like trying to pump money into technology, into colleges and stuff like that. And so in Denver, I remember it was Mayor Wellington Webb. They had like they had initiatives, basically grants for minorities, you know, minority kids, not even just minority. It didn't matter what race you were, but it did matter what your income was, you know, and because I didn't make enough, basically I was eligible, and so was my wife, eligible for these grants. And, you know, so there were the community colleges had, they had different programs. There was customer service, there was medical transcription, which Rachel did. There was information technology, which I picked. And that was the thing. I was like, well, you know, there's and I don't know, this is not very inspirational, but it was like, well, I mean, there's computers in McDonald's, you know, I mean, there's a computer everywhere. And that was the first thing. That's what I was thinking. So I'm like, yo, that's probably going to be the thing that I want to do, because, you know, I'm sure that I will always be able to find work in that. And it's at least something that, you know, I enjoyed problem solving. You know, I enjoyed solving. That's just the way that I am naturally. I like to figure things out, to organize things. And that's kind of what, you know, working in IT is, you know, for me.
Problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like I personally, like I always want to throw my technology out the window if I'm around it too long and it's not reacting like I wanted to. So I've never seen myself in that. And I find it interesting. The thing that I ended up in, I never thought that I was very good at, like athletics or you know, I grew up as a chubby kid, but then again, it's not too surprising that I didn't have a great self-image of myself. So what I go into is things that showed off your self. Okay. And like I'm going to prove to somebody that this is what I can, you know, look at me, I can lift stuff, or I can, you know, lose weight or whatever. And I know you were just taking care of business kind of thing. So right on. Well, so like what other influences that you see has had you? I know your boys are, where they're at, and I know you want to make a difference in the world, and you were talking about the influencers in music. Like, you like this certain kind of music because guys are out there, looking to make a difference, not just talk about their shiny watch.
Right.
What is it about that you gravitate towards? Like, why? Like, what is the difference that you want to make? Like, what?
So I guess in my mind and in my life, like from my whole life, for as long as I can remember, I've just always had this sense of not inequality so much, but just this sense of, like, for some people, for like a very large segment of the population, I'm not even sure that I considered myself as part of that segment of population, which I obviously was. I don't know if I consider myself, but for a large segment of population, things just seem to be just really bad, and it just seemed to be like it didn't have to be that way, Like, it seems to me like a lot of the suffering, and when I say suffering, I mean just. Just the way how sometimes just people don't get along with each other, or just angry towards each other, whether it's based on their race or where they lived or where they came from or anything. I always had a strong empathy for people who are kind of downtrodden, people who it's a little hard to explain because I never really cared about, like, everyone should be rich or anything like that, or everyone should have a lot of money, or everyone should be able to have a car or anything like that. But I just always thought that, and maybe it's because I wasn't always happy, but I just always thought that people should be happier with each other, should be able to get along with each other. Like kids, like, how do you live on a planet? How do you have, on one side of the street, a guy who's got, his house is, a few $100,000, got a nice car, and, a mile away, 2 miles away, there's kids who don't have any food. There's people who don't have anything to eat, and you're living in the same community with each other. And it would be so, for me, I would think like, wow, it would be so easy to help these people who don't have anything. Like, you think of like all of the money and it's just stuff that's out there, like all of the people have so much stuff and money and access to all of these different things that they want, where at the same time you've got people who don't have anything, and when people talk about sharing, well, you're a socialist, or these social things, like, well, if they should be able to just pick themselves up from their, pull up themselves up from their bootstraps, or whatever, however the expression goes. And, to me, it just seems like there's just so many things, so many factors, so many things that factor into people as to why they are where they are or where we are, whether it's, a lot of times you have no control over what your parents did. You have no control over where your parents' station in life was. So you have no control as to where you were born or what class you were born into. It's just kind of happenstance from, this is where we are. And it seems like in a lot of senses that people just suffer so much and things are just so bad just based upon where you were born, how you were lived. There are some people that just don't have anything. So I guess it was just unfairness of, and unfairness kind of sounds like a cop out, like, well, everything isn't supposed to be fair, but I mean, it just seems to me, especially when I would think of kids, because I always just had when I was one as well, it's just kids and weaker people. It's just like they don't have any choice as to where they are. Mm-hmm. Why do they have to suffer? And it just seems like, people should just I don't know. I've just always kind of looked at things and just saw, to me, that things weren't fair. And on top of that, it seemed like, like most people are in that situation. You know what I mean? And when I say most people, I would say, like, what is the planet's like poverty rate? I would say, like, aren't most people like 60% of the planet in the world, or at least that, maybe more, living in poverty? And you've got like a small segment of people that are just doing really well. And we've got all this stuff that we just, I can think of like most of the things in my apartment right now that I could throw away and life would be no different, Yeah.
What I'm hearing is that it's unfortunate that people are defined by their circumstances, mm-hmm. which that necessarily doesn't have to be, but they're like born into this conversation of mm-hmm. poverty, or you are this type of person or whatever. And it's unfair that they continue to think of like that when that's really not the truth. Like right. The truth, like gravity is the truth. You put something hits the ground. That's right. The truth. It's not the truth that because you were born here, you got to end up this way. And it's right. unfair that they still continue to think that way, which that doesn't have to be, Right. There is some people who are like, okay, that they don't believe that it's the truth of their circumstances, that it's got to be like that. So like, how do you see yourself and others out there able to, because I'm going to assume that a lot of people are in your same thought pattern, mm-hmm. that like, maybe they don't, articulate it the same way, but mm-hmm. they're like, yeah, I mean, we can all get along, and there's a lot of things that we can do as a society to come together and support right. each other and stuff like that. And which I'm really up to. I mean, I love it. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted you on the podcast, because I love your thought process and wanting to support others. And I know you have a lot to contribute. Like, okay. What is it that we can all contribute? And what is it that you can contribute to this, whatever, the population, the world that be? The first thing, I think everything starts, like with me, I think it starts with our homes and our children, and, teaching, if you teach, I think teachers just are so underappreciated, not just here, but I mean, like this in most places, but, whether you're a teacher to a class, or you're a teacher to your child, or you're a teacher to someone in the neighborhood. I think the first thing is just, teaching people, teaching kids, teaching like what I do, the first thing that I can do, especially, and I'm just like all of us, I'm a work in progress, and, I've got adult boys. I've also got children. I've got, 24, 23, 21-year-old adult boys. And then soon to be, it's going to be 8 and 4-year-old, child. And as I've been learning, I haven't always made all of the right decisions and been the best example, especially for the adult boys. But as we learn and as we grow, I think that the first thing that we should be doing is being a good example and teaching our children, sometimes it's hard, because sometimes I will see my own biases and realize that I could be teaching, like my own biases, my own prejudices, my own, quote unquote bad way of thinking, which is, you shouldn't say that anything is a bad way of thinking, because we think that's what we do, and it shouldn't be a right or wrong, but some people think negative things. But if we, teach our kids first, like, how to just get along, how to
I guess like, you know, how to, I mean, gosh, I get it's so vast, but I think it's so simple at the same time, you know, and it actually goes to me to like my understanding of the root of most religions. It's just like, you know, love each other, you know, just teach people to love each other, teach people to get along with each other. But, you know, it would be naive to say that that's all that we could do. Right now, I think that, yeah, like it's like things are getting kind of scary, you know, around here. Like you watch the TV, you watch the news, and you see like how much people are starting to like hate each other and be really divisive, and it's not helpful. The news, you know, and I don't know if you want to talk politics or whatever, but you know, I'm not a fan of our president, Donald Trump, but I also, and not to the extreme of what he says it, but I also have like big issue with our news media because they truly are, in my opinion, stoking the flames of this fire. You know, people aren't talking about ways. People aren't talking about all of the things that we have that are the same. You know, all of our commonalities. Everywhere you go, whatever you look at on TV or in the newspaper or online, it talks about our differences and why are we different. I'm different from this person because I like this statue, or you know, or I, you know, I sat down for this person sat down for the Pledge of Allegiance, or that person wants a statue over there, or what have you, and you know, but then, you know, at work or on the street or in the gym or whatever, it's the same people that you're getting along with, you're doing normal things with, that because people have so much in common. You know, we have so many different things in common. But if we wanted to point out all the things that we're like I'm sure there's things that you think differently of me, and I'm sure you have like lots of friends. Like I have friends, you know, as much as I don't like our president, like, you know, two of my best buddies out here, I'm sure voted for him. You know, I'm not going to end my friendship with them over that. You know, there's other different things that, you know, that you can do. But when people are just highlighting our differences, it makes things bad. And I think that starts in school. You know, I think in school is where we first start to separate each other. You know, even in class, I don't like that in my kids' school, in Justin's school, that they'll like, okay, you're a green dot if you read really well, but if you don't, you're like a brown dot. And so all these kids are in the brown group, and these kids, not the color. I'm just making up the colors because I don't remember what they are, but they separate them. Or you guys don't read as good as these guys do, so these guys must somehow be a little bit better. And I don't say anything because Justin's on the group that's better. so, but it's like, man, that's like, if he was on the bottom group, I'd be like, well, why are you doing that? Why are you separating them out like that? You know, it's just,
like there's got to be, you know, measures of how we're doing, and yet not have it define who we are. You know, like I got it. And I want to have it clear for everybody who's listening that, you know, measures, of course we got to have measures, you know, you got to, at work, you got to do this, and you only did this. So this is where the gap is. This is where it's lacking. And it doesn't define you as a failure or whatever. And so, I got it that it starts in school, where we start to, you know, put that division in between people, and the kids especially, and they're so susceptible to the influences, like, oh, you're the green dot and I'm the brown dot kind of thing. But it's not like you're the green dot forever, or you're the brown dot for forever. It's not like who people are. We all are similar, and yet,
it shouldn't be. But the thing is that when you when you group people like that, you set expectations in your own mind as to what you think that each group is. And I don't know how much you deal with kids, but a kid is going to become his expectation. Do you know what I mean? If you expect a child to only do bad and you interact with that child with those expectations, the child is going to pick up on that and expect he's going to absorb those same expectations for himself. Dad or teacher doesn't expect me to be able to get better than a C on this test. So if I got a C on the test, then I did pretty good. I met expectations, and there's no reason for me to try to meet the expectation to get a B on this test, because then I might just be pushing myself too hard. Do you know what I mean? And I especially, like, I by no means any type of an expert or anything like that, but I've worked like in daycare centers, you know, and you get large groups of kids, and you can tell from the different teachers, like, you know, the kids will have different teachers, and the kids will act differently with each teacher because some teachers expect different things from those kids, and the kids know that. And it was just like with myself and my ex-wife. We would have battles, and it would go into court because the kids would act one way at one parent's house and another way at the other parent's house. And it's because we set different expectations. One of us expected the kids were going to just always be bad, and so the kids were always bad at that time. The other one expected, hey, when you're here, you're going to be respectful. And the kids knew, oh, I'm expected to be respectful, so that's how I'm going to be, you know? And so that's why I think that when you group people, you're setting expectations without giving them the option to see that they can actually outreach those, you know, go past those expectations.
Well, this is freaking great, because I'm having these visions, like all this stuff is popping into my head. Like if I'm walking down the street and I see a homeless guy, my expectations could be that he's going to hassle me for money or something like that. And so he more likely he's going to live into those expectations. So if I have an expectation of like, he's going to be a cool dude, just chit chat and just like be an interesting guy, then more than likely, you know, it's like, this is really great. I don't even know how to articulate it, but it's having like speaking into somebody bigger than they actually are, or something like that. This could be like a micro level. It could be so huge. So to break the cycle of all this bullshit going on, we just need to speak to each other bigger than we actually know who we are. And you know, like if somebody just told me you're only going to be this, you're just going to be that fat kid forever, and that's all, like, we're only going to talk to you as, then that's what I'm going to become.
Right. That's what you expected. Well, that's what is expected of me. So,
but somebody along the way said, no, you're going to be an expert in this field. Like you're the man doing that, whatever it is. Like, so. Yeah, I get all, like, I don't even know how to articulate it. All this shit's going around in my head.
Well, yeah, you know, it's like my son, Adrian, which a lot of people say he just turned 21 2 days ago. He turned 21 on the 16th. You know, and he's in college now. But one thing that I noticed, because people say that he's like a mirror of me, you know, as far as like in intelligence and stuff like that. But one thing that I see when we're out interacting, like I took him to New York a few years ago with me. Everyone that he came in contact with, like my family and stuff like that, would tell him, "Oh, you're so smart. You can do so much. You can do this and that." And it inspired him. And he I'm going to read, this and that. I didn't, and I see myself as him. We are very similar. When I was growing up, people didn't say stuff like that to me. They weren't encouraging. If anything, it was like, oh, you're such a smart ass. Just shut up, dude. Like, oh, you think you're so smart. That's not going to be any useful around here, whatever. So, and so again, it sets expectations for where you are. And like the homeless guy that you're describing, he doesn't know what's in your mind of your expectations. But when you go and you interact with him, it becomes apparent. You're either going to interact with him with the expectation of, he's just going to hassle you, which is going to be kind of a standoffish way of interacting with him, or you're going to interact with him differently, like, hey, this might be a cool guy. And whether he doesn't know what's going on in your mind, but the way he sees you is going to be totally different based on your expectations of your interaction with him, right?
Yeah. We've talked a lot about making a difference in the prison system because of your sons and your experience being in the prison, and your brother, and you see, how they are when they come out and all this kind of stuff. Right. I really want to make a difference for young men, especially because that's really our future. And right. Without the mentors that I've had in my life who've seen something in me, I wouldn't be who I am today. And it's different than having a father figure or somebody telling you, a parental figure that telling you what to do. A mentor is totally different to me. And right. So what do you talk a little bit about that? Like what kind of difference do you want to make because of your experience with right. your boys? And
okay. Yeah. So I have my two oldest sons are in prison, both for different reasons. I've tried, I don't want to say always, but I've tried to be the type of person that when I look at things of like inequality and stuff like that I see, I've tried for the better part, I think for at least the last half of my life, have tried to not look at things in terms of race or color or anything like that, and more looked at things in terms of like class, like certain people, like, again, like what my kids did, and why they're at where they are. There's no making excuses for them or anything like that. I mean, they did wrong. But obviously, as we live in a society where if, the finances of the family were different and there were different lawyers and stuff like that, they probably wouldn't be where they are. But I have 5 boys, basically, 5 boys. And from my perspective, this is why I don't want to take things solely to be as a part of race. But obviously, like in the news lately, you're seeing a lot of young African American and young minority kids having these interactions with police and getting shot. And this is, again, that's kind of a quick diversion or tangent, that this is part of the reason why I get upset with the media, because I know that happens, but they don't show. God, I'm going to get myself in trouble with my own people, but they don't show anybody else having these interactions with police. And I'm sure that it's not, and I know it's probably overly blacks and it's overly minorities, but I'm sure it happens with every nationality. I don't think that it happens with every class of person, like some of these black kids who got shot. I don't think it mattered so much that I don't think it mattered as much as they were black, but I always think that if they had on a suit and tie, as opposed to, sweats and a cap turned backwards, that the interaction would be differently. Because when it comes to social class, someone in authority might look differently. So you can see there's plenty of poor white kids I'm sure who are being abused by cops. I'm sure there's all kinds of people that are being abused. And that's what I think of when we think about these things, because when people take it to make it a question of race, then it takes a lot of power away from what the actual problem is. And the actual problem really, to me, isn't race, but it is just the fact that sometimes people with power or assumed power, that's even whether it's given to them by the state or whatever, will take advantage of people that are perceived to have less power. But that's not what you asked me about. What you had asked me about was the prison system and stuff like that. So when I was talking about as it pertains to my boys, because I have a lot of reasons to be concerned, with young men. I mean, not the ones that are just, who are already in the system, but then I've got the younger ones who have to grow up and who are going to have, a lot of the same experiences. But when we talk about the ones who are actually in the prison system, they eventually are going to have to come out, and they've got to rejoin society, and they've got to learn. Already, obviously, there were some problems there where they didn't learn all of the right ways to get through this game called life without getting locked up or what have you. But now they've got to relearn how to deal with people, how to reintegrate, like the son with the kid. He has to learn how to find some way to have a relationship with his son without falling back into the same thing of arguing with his kid's mom. The other one who basically had the gun thing, he is going to come out. He's still angry. He's angry in there now. He's going to come out even angrier with like no hopes now they're felons, and there's not a lot out there for felons. Me personally, because like you said, we've talked about these things before about young men and how they could help. I personally would love it if I could get those two, that when they came out, to try to find some way to redirect their energy, not only towards their younger brothers, but more metaphorically, the younger brothers, all the younger men that are out there, to kind of, hey, look, this is where we were, and this is how we got here. This is follow my example of what not to do, or to like refocus there. Because as men, as men, as young men, we have a lot of pressure put on us by society that tells us we have to be a certain way. We've got to be strong. It's not usually okay for us to be sensitive. If somebody insults us, then we got to react angrily, or disrespect me, and especially younger men, especially young men. It's a lot of reasons for them to feel like they have to, claim their stake to society, to the little things that they have. And especially if, like, from in my community, and when I say my community, I just mean like, people who are like, working class community, the young men in that community don't have a lot of anything else. They might have their cell phone and that, but most of all they have is their respect and how their family sees them, and how the people how their woman sees them. If they don't respect themselves, then a lot of the times they try and find, false kind of illusionary ways to get respect, whether it's through a weapon or through some is positive, some people can try to work hard and do the right thing, but then other kids no, I want more money. I'm going to get fast money. I mean, that's what one of them is talking about. It's funny because the second oldest, O'Shea, he was looking at like a century, but they gave him a plea bargain. I mean, the fact of the matter was they probably couldn't really convict him. But he didn't have a good lawyer. And so when you're looking at all this time, you take a plea bargain, it's just like kind of a no-brainer. You're looking at a plea bargain. Yeah, you could probably beat it, but you're looking at a lot of time. So he took a plea bargain that actually put him in a prison system. It's the youthful offender system here in Colorado that actually gives him access to, he's basically, I think he would be a qualified audio video technician. He can do, I work in IT from the stuff. It sounds like he can do all kinds of crap that I can't do on a computer, and he's also he's learning video editing. He's learning all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, that's great. These are all kinds of things you can do when you get out. He's like, no, I just want to make money. I just want to make money, fast money, real fast. And like, well, how are you going to do that? I don't know. So it's like, so even though having like all of these opportunities there, he, still wants, and I'm like, how do I get there? When I try to get through to him, we argue, and of course, because I'm his father, he's not going to really listen so much to me, but I'm sure that there's men out there. I mean, there are so many of us out there who should be able to mentor and guide. And I think that, I don't know, I want to put a label on it, but it's kind of sad in the sense that when we're like in these things that we're talking about, as far as like men and young men and stuff like that, my biggest influences or my biggest role models were my lack of role models. Does that make sense? Like the fact, when I look back on it now, the fact that there weren't a lot of positive male role models in my life, I always knew when I was a kid that, okay, that's not good. I wish I knew a lot of different ways to, and kids had to be a man, to learn the right things. And, I love my mom, obviously, but she's my mom. She doesn't know all of it, didn't know. She only had what she knew to work with, and at the time, back in the 70s or whatever, we, as a people, as a society, we were just all screwed up anyway, as to what we should teach kids and what we shouldn't teach kids and different things. So I recognize the lack, and I recognize the hole that it creates, to not have, for a young man, to not have good male influences. And when I say good, I don't mean like, he's got to be a lawyer or
right.
Run a Fortune 500 company or anything like that, but a positive male who is there and who it's okay, who can tell you that it's okay, the way that you think, the way that you feel, it's okay, but let's find ways to make your natural instincts work for you and not against you, because I mean, it's like, again, like the kids that I have that are in the institution, that are institutionalized, I mean, it can be a cycle, it can be a whole life cycle. And so I wrestle with, how much can I do as their father? How much am I responsible for doing? I mean, in a sense, I'm responsible for everything, but I mean, they're adults also, and they're responsible for their own life. And, there's these different, these different dynamics. One, it's like, well, what part did my role play in their existence? Go ahead.
1 second.
Yep.
All right.
So you have an open yard there kind of thing there where people just kind of pop up. Hey, Harry Roberts over there. I'm going to go stop by and talk to him.
It's funny. Yeah, just so people know what the heck's going on. I'm sitting outside, and somebody just randomly came up and wanted to talk to me. So, I'm like, I'm kind of in the middle of something.
Yeah, it's so funny because he told him, like, you're like, I'm in a meeting. He's like, yeah, so anyway,
It's totally derails what we're up to. It's so funny. I don't know if anybody can get the content. If you were listening to this, probably going, what the
hell is going on?
What the hell is going on? Yeah, I'm outside. Somebody randomly was like, oh, yeah, it was Robert. And I pushed, like you heard it, but I pushed pause on that recording, and I did say, "Hey, I'm in the meeting now," and he continued to talk to me. He's like, "Okay, great, you're in the meeting, right? Well, I just wanted to tell you."
That doesn't have any influence on my plans or the point that I needed to speak to you right now.
I know. What I have to say is, I'm going to say it. All right, bro, great.
Right. Anyway.
Oh, it's funny. All right. Well, where were we?
We were talking about like young men, and I think that's something. I don't know exactly, because I know you obviously do way more work. I more deal with my boys, and for the most part, that's what I deal with and have been contemplating doing more. And I know that you are doing more. I don't want to, I guess, I know, I assume that the young men that you work with are probably not as much like the young men that I envision dealing with, as far as I see that there are like in more low income communities and stuff like that, where people really like the men really need some help there. But then at the same time, that's probably like a bad way of thinking. That's almost like putting it into separating in classes itself there, because I mean, whether you come from a wealthy background or middle class or low income or whatever, we're still human, and we still have some of we still have some of the same problems, regardless of what social class or what nationality we come from. That as men, there are different things that, or young men or boys or whatever, there are different things or similarities in some of our difficulties,
Yeah. I'd really like this conversation that we're having now is to inspire others who are listening, including myself. I'm just getting re-inspired to do mentorships. I particularly am inspired to work with young men, because I at one time was one, and I know what it's like, and I can relate to young men where young women, not necessarily. I mean, like you said, we're all the same in some aspects, but I know in particularly what young men deal with, whatever class they're in. I mean, we all have these. We grow up and we have these thoughts and hormones and all that kind of stuff, no matter where we live or, what color we are and stuff like that. So that's who I want to influence, and to inspire others who are listening to, have an impact. What they have what they have to give to others is a gift, no matter who they talk to. And I want to inspire and mentor as many young men as I can, no matter where they are, and especially in those who I don't think have the opportunities that maybe somebody outside of the prison system do. Of course they're locked up. They don't have, and really what I would love to see is them have a fighting chance when they get out, because whether people are listening, think it or not, that is our future. All these guys are our future, whether they're locked up or they're not. Because if they're locked up and they're having influences on other men, telling them to do wrong or make fast money or whatever, they're an influence whether they ever get out of prison or not. They're an influence on others around them. And if we can impact and just like, I don't know, I just see that it's possible to make a change. And
I agree with you. I think right now, I mean, like the prison system, I think I talked to you about one of these meetings that I went to for like the community corrections and stuff like that. They have things, there are things that are there, but something's just not clicking. Something's just not working. There's not something that is as impactful because, if you've got these people, especially in the prison system, who, I mean, they're in that prison system 24/7. They're in there all day. That's their life. And if they've got some years on them, they've got years in that. But then you've got these people who will come in once every couple of weeks and sit with them for an hour, tell them, you can be a better person and dream the dream. And then they go back home to their wives or their lives or whatever. And then these guys are there still 24/7. I think that there needs, and I don't know how much the prison system, like the wardens or whoever the administrative or whoever the staff is that needs to decide these things. But if there was some way to make it so that the people who really do care and who really want to have an impact can do more than just, spot checking every couple of weeks in a group setting, I mean, and a lot of this stuff comes down to money and funding, like if you could have mentors, we have mentors for kids who aren't in the system. And I'm talking, when I say kids, I'm talking like people in their young 20s, early 20s or whatever, or 18, like late teens, who, if you can mentor them and actually have a really good, rapport with these people, not, where they're like now, I mean, I don't know how it is in California, but here, man, these kids have tablets, they all have a tablet that they get music streamed in on it, but they can make phone calls on their tablets.
Talk about in the prison system.
Yeah, in the prison system, they've each got like a tablet. All the prisoners in Colorado through all the states. I think Colorado is one of the first states that's experimenting with it with all of them. And, I imagine eventually, like right now, this is going to be, when you do this, it's going to be on the audio, but we're looking at each other having this conversation. I'm sure their tablets have cameras on them. Thing. Yeah. And where you should be able to do these types of things. We as a society, we really need to get out of this mentality of just kind of locking someone up, punishing them and saying, you'll learn when you're punished. I mean, it's like when we were kids and we got spanked or whatever, and that was our punishment. Yeah, it hurt. It didn't really teach us anything, I mean, we were just better at not getting caught next time, like, all right, mom hit me. I still want to do what I did. I just don't want to get caught. So let me figure out a better way to get around it, as opposed to teaching real like cause and effects of things that happen. We can punish people forever, but if we're not really teaching them anything, showing them, better ways, then we're just doing that cycle over and over.
Yeah. Well, there is prison systems around the world that they're not punishing their prisoners. They're actually educating them and having them come out as contributing people in the society. Well, what if I just want to inspire others that whoever is listening to this, that they can make a difference. And, all of us can make a difference in some aspect, somewhere in their life. What is something that you would like to have people know or leave people with? If you can have like Tim Ferriss says, if you can have a big ass billboard that everyone could see, what would the message be? I'm stealing that from you, Tim Ferriss.
I didn't hear that one. So if I had something that I wanted everyone to see, something that Oh man, that's a good one. Like what, like the biggest main motivator, to see and actually, take to heart. It's kind of corny, I guess. But I mean, it's like really, like love each other, like, get along, go into Rodney King, like, why can't we get along? I mean, it sounds so simplistic, but that's why I love kids. You can take kids from all nationalities, you put them in a schoolyard, they're going to go out there and play with each other, they're going to go out there and have a good time, play with each other. None of them are going to, how many gods do you pray to? Or, they don't care. And if they do care and ask about it, it's because they have common interest, because there's curiosity in it, and, somewhere along the line, whether we learn it from our parents or we get the signals from television, from what we're supposed, like with men, just like with everything, we a lot of the ways that we learn to be who we are, if we didn't learn it from our parents, we should get most of it from our parents. But unfortunately, most of us get our cues and our signals from the media, from the television, from the movies that we see, Top Gun, we got to be, Maverick and but we forget some of our natural, normal compassions, that we have for each other. And I just wish that we could find ways to get back to that, get back to, when I say get back to that, like we ever were at that. I think our history shows pretty good, steady pace of us killing each other and being rude to each other and mean to each other. So maybe not get back to that, but maybe get to that, get to a point where we can really start to I don't know. I think we just really need like a revolution, in this country, and like a revolution of consciousness where people start to understand like priorities. Because I think it was like what I was thinking before, how we have like embassies all over the world. Like in China, we got an American embassy. If we had like embassies in our community, like if we had ways for people to see that, the people in our community, we're all together. We're all in this thing together. We have a collective we should have a collective purpose to want to have the same goals for all of us to be, to progress and do better. But instead we're not, we're dividing. We're dividing each other. We divide, everything out. I want more and you should have less, and you're not going to have anything more than me. You have way more than me, then I must not be good. We just really need to shift our focus on things. But I think it comes down to, first and foremost, is that we need to start caring about each other, just loving each other, and stop all this is just like a lot of hatred out there. I think a lot of that hatred starts internally. We hate a lot of things about ourselves, and so we project that hatred onto others too.
I do. All we need is love. La, 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 la. As much as I'm not a big fan of that song, but it's just like it's what comes up. Right? Yeah, what we really need is love. It's very simplistic, and well, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, could they, or where would they get a hold of you if they're inspired to do so and make a difference and connect with you? Where can
there's lots of, this is 2017. I've got probably ways to access me that I didn't even know about. Like, oh, Snapchat, you can do that too on there. I could always, that's the thing is, Sometimes, people need to be pushed. I can definitely be pushed. And I'm definitely, I'd love to hear new ideas and find people that are willing to work with, help me to help each other, Mm-hmm. I could always be emailed at Dionizio.Fisher@gmail. That's DIONIZIO.FISHER@gmail.com. Facebook is Decranium, I think is my handle on Facebook. And that's DACRANIUM. My Twitter handle is The Knee Show, spelled out the KNEESHOW. Phone 720-296-2187. I could probably go on for like ever, dude. I work in IT. I can give you my 3 company emails I have.
I think that would be good for now. I'll put all this in the show notes and thanks for being connectable and I really appreciate you being on the show. We've talked a lot. We reconnected. I don't know how long ago it was. Probably a year ago.
It was about close to a year. Yeah. It was close to a year. When you came out here last year, it was around maybe towards the end of the year last year, something like that. Because we started having every meeting every other week around January. Mm-hmm. We've been talking for a minute now here.
Yeah. Reconnected after a minute, after a few years of not, and I've always wanted you on the show. It's just you didn't have it that you were ready to be on the show.
Right. Well,
I really appreciate you getting over whatever you had to get over to be on the show, and I really appreciate you. And you are a gift, and you have a lot to give, and I appreciate you as long as I know, along with a lot of the people, whether your sons say they're not listening to you or not, they are.
I appreciate that. I definitely, it's definitely good to hear that, to be appreciated. You're obviously, I tell you all the time, I think you're doing awesome stuff. You kind of are one of the people that has inspired me to really get off of my butt and start thinking more community minded and more focused and driven towards making a change, towards doing more things. And it's a matter of stop talking about it, but actually getting up and doing it. And it's definitely inspiring to see that you're doing your personal training, you got the podcast, you got other things that's going on as well too. And then you and your wife, I think, I think you're definitely an inspiration, and I appreciate that, on my own end. And so hopefully we can both be more inspirations to other people who will also be inspirations to others, and so on and so on and so on.
Starts right here, man.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool, brother. Well, I really appreciate it. And until next time. So before all y'all leave, I just really want to thank you for listening to the show, and anything that is linkable will be in the show notes. And until next time, peace out. So Nisho and I would like to blow it up. So fist pump, boom. Yeah.
We're out. Right on, man. Wait.
All right, and there you have it. There's Dionizio Fisher and I chit-chatting about how we are going to save the world. And I really want to say thank you to all of you who are out there saving the world and in your own way, and making a huge contribution in your life and others' lives. Whether you think it or not, you are a contribution, and you do make an impact, and you do make a difference. And it's whether we want to continue making that difference, or make a bigger difference, or make a bigger impact, it's all up to us and taking those actions, right? So listening to this podcast, I think that's one way of taking steps to make a difference in your life and others. So we got to work on our life and our shit first, so we can really contribute So that's what I'm up to, and that's what I have. Why I have this podcast, and why I interview those who I interview. And I just really appreciate all of you, and I really appreciate your time and you listening to this. I don't take it lightly that all y'all are out there listening to this. So, a couple of things before you take off is all the show notes, anything that could be linked, I will have on my website, robertbudd.net, and you can check out the podcast tabs, and anything that could be linked, I put on there. And also all the other podcasts that I've done are also robertbudd.net/podcast. If you would like to get a very short email from me once a month about all kinds of different topics of different things that I'm reading, researching, trying out in my life, just stuff that I'm finding that is impacting my life positively, I put on those and I send them out. So if you like to get one of those emails once a month, go to my website, robertbudd.net, and put your email address and where it says drop your email here, and you'll get the very next one. So anyways, so much love goes out to each and every one of you, and I really appreciate all of you. And until next time, keep on keeping on.